All right, everyone, welcome back into another live edition of the Patriots Beat podcast here on the CLNS Media Network, presented by our wonderful friends over at Prize Picks and Game Time. It's Brian Hines back as always with Alex Barth. We got an extra day there to kind of sit on that Patriots game that occurred Saturday, and it was not a good one. It was, some are calling it a calamity. I don't think Barth was ready to go that far, but it was an ass whooping, 40-7 to the Los Angeles Chargers there at Gillette Stadium again on Saturday. It was really the one thing they couldn't afford to do is go out there and lay a complete egg like that after one of their more competitive games of the season. Even though they lost in Buffalo, they kept it close. They showed some signs of growth, especially on the defensive side of the football. And then they get out there on Saturday and it all falls apart. So we'll start where we do every week now. Where are you at with Gerard Mayo and everything going around with him on that coaching staff after that one?
Yeah, this was the first game I came away from. So if you've watched the show, you kind of know where I've been in that. Is there a strong case to fire Gerard Mayo? Yes. But I've kind of said, that being said, at the end of the year, if we're just playing the prediction game, if I had to put money on it, won't he? My guess was he would be back. That's how I'd felt up to this point. This was the first game I came away from prediction wise thinking, and this is just me, my instincts. This isn't talking to anybody or reporting anything, but this was just me coming away from that game thinking, with all the reporting we'd heard, and there was all that reporting, he's safe unless it goes off the rails. He's safe unless it's a calamity, right? That was the first game I walked away from saying, that might qualify. That might qualify as the thing that he couldn't afford to have to save his job. Now, I had read into off the rails, calamity, losing control. I had read that into that meaning like non-X's and O's things. If they're getting blown out on the field, they're getting blown out on the field. The ownership will chalk it up to talent. They'll chalk it up to the roster because he still had the locker room. He still had control of the football team. So it's not just the way the game went, but you see guys starting to quit in that game. The decision to leave Drake Maye in as late as they did and potentially risk injury. Players like Keon White, Pop Douglas, Jonathan Jones, in so many words, questioning the coaching staff after the game. It was all of that I looked at and kind of felt like, just me personally, again, I'm not reporting anything here. It's like, this is the first time that like I could see it being going in the direction that ownership might make a move. And I'm 50-50 today. Like I'm not expecting anything. I think either way, I wouldn't be surprised at this point. And there's still obviously one game to go. And Adam Schefter was on, let me pull it up. Actually, I have it right here. Adam Schefter was on McAfee this morning. I thought I had it right here. Do you have it right there?
No, but he kind of just said the same stuff they've been saying, where like the Crafts want him back, but if he has another one of these games where, okay, it's going to be week 18, sounds like based off what Sean McDermott said, the Bills are resting their starters. Yeah. And like another one of these games, like how many another one of these games do we need to see?
Well, that's my point. I don't think it was. Did we ever have reporting that it was another one of these games, or is just this vague, like if disaster happens? Another one of these games is more direct
than just like a complete
than just like, hey, right? Because like we spent weeks parsing what that meant, and we still don't know. We still don't like it. It could have just meant a bad blowout, which that was an incredibly bad blowout. That's like as bad as it gets. Chargers probably could have hung 50 if they kept the foot on the gas. So yeah, that's where I'm at. Like, I do wonder if some of what we saw in that game on the field, off the field, is what those reports have been alluding to is what Mayo couldn't have. That vague situation that was given. Yeah, he's most likely to be back unless, and then, what's after that unless was never really filled in. But if we're going to fill it in, I mean, doesn't that feel like everything that happened in that game after that game could qualify?
Yeah, because you're, as you said, and I agree with a lot of your points. Like you're starting to see the stuff that you can't chalk up to just talent, right? Like, we know they're not a talented football team.
Right.
We knew they weren't. I think Devon Godshaw even said, we knew we weren't going to win the Super Bowl this year and stuff like that. But you're seeing players come out, Keon White being one of the loudest voices. Funny because it's Keon White, but one of those guys that say exactly, questioning the coaching. Then Mayo is on the radio before the game. He says that's not really what he meant. Then we go to Keon White in the locker room after the game. He says, "What did you actually mean?" He goes, "Exactly what I said." Right. So they're not on the same page, even though it sounds like they're saying they're on the same page. And he's exactly questioning the coaching. He doesn't feel. It seems like he doesn't feel like he likes how he's being used, and that he's taking a step back as a player, and that's tied to coaching. And another one, you didn't even mention this one, the whole Antonio Gibson, Ramondre Stevenson thing, where
that's a good point. That's another good one.
On the radio, an hour and a half or whenever, Saturday morning, sometime before the game, and saying Antonio Gibson is going to start. And Ross Tucker, who was calling the game, who was in a production meeting with Mayo, said, "We're going to start Antonio Gibson. We want to send this message to Ramondre Stevenson and the rest of the team that you'll be held accountable for these fumbling issues." And then we get out there, and Ramondre Stevenson is in the opening huddle and starting the game. And it's like, are there a miscommunication, or are just the details not buttoned up? And like that, it was a bad look to Mayo. Obviously, I think Mike Reese asked him multiple times after the game this morning. I don't know if it was Mike this morning, but someone asked if he wanted to clarify, and he wouldn't get into any detail about that, just saying it was a coaching decision. But it's just, and that's been summarizing his whole kind of tenure here this year, handling the media, right? Like, the messages are mixed messages all over the place, and it's not a good look now if it's kind of trickling down to the roster, like the game day operations and stuff like that. So yeah, you are starting to see these types of things that it could cause hesitancy, obviously, to bring him back, because you can't just chalk it up to we don't have talent on the football team. Things kind of are, falling apart all over the place, it seems.
Yeah, it's all good points. And I think what happened there was it was probably coach speak, where it's like let's be starting an NFL game as a running back. Most positions starting is kind of irrelevant in the big picture, because
play a snap and then come out of the game.
Right. You could have a star wide receiver, but you decide we're going to run the first snap in jumbo to send a message. Boom, the guy doesn't get to start. Now, that being said, there is something ceremonial about taking that starting snap away. And after 7 fumbles, I think that was warranted. I also think when we talked about it, and I said this, I don't care who starts, it's who's your lead back, who's getting most of the responsibilities, who's getting most of the snaps. The game log will tell you it was Antonio Gibson. That was not the case until that final garbage drive where the Chargers just gifted them 50 yards and frankly made this whole thing in the box score look nearly not as bad as it was. And it still looks pretty bad.
He had 6 carries on the final drive, and he broke one for 20 yards. So
and he finished with 5 more snaps total than Stevenson. So my issue isn't, Mayo should not have said that Gibson was starting and then started Stevenson. What I think he was trying to say was that Gibson's going to be the lead back. Antonio Gibson's going to get most of the workload, most of the carries. I think it ended up being 11-2, right? But again, you take out that final garbage time drive at 6-2. So they didn't really run at all. What I think Mayo meant to say was, we're going to make Gibson the lead back. He's going to get most of the carries. Stevenson's role is going to shrink to the second back. That's what I think he meant to say. So it's another case of him not presenting information in the right way. But then they didn't even really do that. They got it at the end, so they had the number, but they didn't even really do that. That whole thing was very weird. Yeah, and I wonder if it maybe speaks to a disconnect between Mayo and Alex Van Pelt.
Yeah. So, and I know we just said like those are the things outside of X's and O's scheme related. If you want to go to the field, like what happened on the field, the defense completely fell apart. The Chargers scored a season high 40 points, 7 straight scoring drives. They gave 2 90+ yard scoring drives. Right, the Chargers were backed up inside their own 10-yard line 3 times, and they let them march down the field twice for touchdowns. The other one they forced a punt was the first drive of the game. So, and this was a matchup where again you had a really good plan last week against Josh Allen and that Bills offense. You look at this offense, in the Chargers, and you say, okay, you can kind of match up the same way, right? They don't have many receivers outside of Ladd McConkey in the slot who actually torched them, as we should have all seen coming, 90 yards, 2 touchdowns. They actually held up pretty decently against the ground game, but they couldn't touch Justin Herbert. Another one of those games where he could have put his jersey if it wasn't raining, right, in the pro shop or Hall of Fame or whatever. They couldn't get a pass rush. They haven't been able to kind of manufacture that pass rush all year. And then the coverage, I know they lost Christian Gonzalez in the second quarter at some point in that first half, but the secondary and the coverage kind of fell apart as well. Jonathan Jones had a lot of problems with McConkey, and it was just it was a mess defensively from that side of the ball again after one of their better efforts. And that comes down to, Gerard Mayo is a defensive head coach, and DeMarcus Covington still just looks like he's in way too over his head as a defensive coordinator.
Yeah, they looked lost, and to me it wasn't a ton like the Rams game where it was like they were doing all this in-depth schematic stuff and the Patriots just couldn't keep up. The Chargers kind of kept throwing the same thing against them, same basic looks against them, and they never adjusted. So This was not a good look, especially for the defensive coaching staff.
Yeah, that's where I think a change, if they run back Mayo, right? Like if the Crafts stay kind of solid here and they want to give Gerard a second chance, that's where I think the first change has to happen. Is you got to wipe out that defensive coaching staff. It's not worked. The results have not worked. I get like they've lost Christian Barmore and Juwan Bentley has been out most of the year. You have Kyle Duggar playing on one ankle. Jabril Peppers has been in and out with his legal situation. I get you were at a talent deficit, but it's just not working there. And now you're like, Keon White, Jonathan Jones, defensive players calling out coaches. It's the defensive coaching staff. So that's where I think if it is Mayo coming back, that's where I think kind of the first big change has to be is blowing up that kind of defensive side of the football and DeMarcus Covington.
Yeah, we talked about Gerard Mayo's job. Obviously, that's relevant. To me, I think you got to be near a point of no return with DeMarcus Covington, just the way this defense has looked.
Yep. Anything else with Mayo or Covington coaching staff? Anything else from Saturday there?
And that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Do you think they're going to bench Drake Maye this week? What would you kind of do if you're this staff going into week 18 here?
Why are we all acting like if they bench Drake Maye, they're automatically going to lose the game? Do we need to educate people, Brian, on Matt Flynn? Because do you even remember Matt Flynn?
Yeah, it was like 5 touchdowns or something.
He set the Packers, and I think he still holds them. He set the Packers single game franchise records for passing yards 480 and touchdowns 6 in a game against the Detroit Lions. So this was for people who don't know, Matt Flynn was, and this is the Packers. This is the Eliot Wolf was a low-level staffer, but it's Ron Wolf, draft a quarterback every year, turn them through, churn them and burn them, see if you can get their value up, trade them. So he was like a 7th-round pick. He'd started one game, oddly enough, against the Patriots. It was the Dan Connolly kick return game because Aaron Rodgers was hurt. He'd started one game in 3 years. He was the backup in 2011. It's the opposite in the sense that they had the playoffs clinched instead of being out, but they didn't want to play Aaron Rodgers. So Matt Flynn gets the start, his second career start, 30 against the Detroit Lions, 31 of 44, 480 yards, 6 touchdowns and a pick in a 45-41 win. That performance earned him like a very sizable contract from the Seattle Seahawks that offseason. So unlike Joe Milton, he was a free agent at the end of the year. He got a 3-year, $20.5 million deal, which doesn't sound like a lot for a quarterback now, but that was kind of significant then. And then he lost the starting job to Russell Wilson in camp.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, was that when they drafted Wilson after? Yeah.
But he was supposed to be the starter. He was signed to be the starter. Yeah. And then he ended up here at one point. I think he was just here for like a summer. But
cup of coffee.
Who's to say Joe Milton doesn't go out there and sling it against the Bills backups? And even then, who says they like, everybody's like, oh, Joe Milton will suck. You'll be fine. 1, Joe Milton might light it up. 2, Joe Milton might light it up and you could still lose. You could just lose a shootout between Joe Milton and Mitch Trubisky because of the defense. So let's not act like benching Drake Maye is significant. I think if I had to guess now, just my gut, Drake Maye gets one drive so they can say they started him. And the Bills are probably going to do the same thing. Josh Allen's going to hand off 3 times so he can keep his game started streak. Give Drake Maye a drive, essentially like a preseason game, low-intensity drive, and then you go to Joe Milton, because that's, I think, what the Bills are going to do with Trubisky, too. I don't think Allen's going to be, like, inactive.
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of treat this like a preseason game. And I think it's, like, getting Drake Maye out of there healthy should be the number one goal, because if he goes out there, and I get like the hit to the heads, those are happening with him, but he almost got hip drop tackled to death by Derwin James on one of those sacks yesterday. If he goes out there and, tears up his ankle or knee, and you ruin any of that offseason development, or if he's rehabbing or has to do something where now you miss time in OTAs or time in training camp, or maybe he's trying to learn a new offense if a new offensive coordinator comes in here, like, that is a huge loss, maybe even more loss than, moving from 1 to 3 in the draft or something. So getting Drake Maye out of there healthy is kind of the number one goal. So I wouldn't be.
Well, let me ask you this, Brian. Let's look at it another way. Let's say Joe Milton goes out there and, like, lights it up. Let's say you give him the opportunity, he lights it up.
Draft trade, baby.
Right. You could flip him for, you got him for a 5th. I don't know. Am I being too bold if I say a 3rd? Would you rather have, call it the 2nd overall pick, 3rd overall pick? Would you rather have the 3rd overall pick and that's it? Would you rather have the 1st overall pick and that's it, or the 3rd overall pick and an extra top 100 you get for Joe Milton?
Probably the 1st overall pick, because I think if I'm trading down, I could get a bigger, like, if I'm trading from 1 to 3, I could probably get a bigger haul than just
trade down from 3 to 5. Probably get a decent haul. It's either going to be for quarterback or Travis Hunter. You can get a good haul there.
Yeah, but then you're out of potentially Travis Hunter range if you still want him.
I'm okay with them being out on Travis Hunter. Tremendous player. He's kind of a luxury pick for them right now, especially if it's as a quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, ideally you can get an offensive tackle, but if there's not one up there worthy of the pick, right, that's the conversation we'll be having 4 months there. But yeah, maybe Joe Milton does go and slings it around, and then maybe you're saying, okay, we don't need to bring back Jacoby Brissett or go get another veteran backup. Maybe you're comfortable with Joe Milton just as your primary backup
that too
year. So him having a good game, preferably, and maybe a competitive loss wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. But one other thing, while we were talking about these kind of changes that could be coming, you did mention Eliot Wolf there when you were talking about Packers quarterbacks. Has anything changed, on your opinion, about his status with the team? Because watching, could someone be sitting there, the Crafts, and watching Ladd McConkey do all that yesterday, while Jalen Polk and Javon Baker are stapled to the bench, and maybe have some feelings about Eliot Wolf? Would you go there yet with the kind of de facto general manager there?
I mean, I'm sitting him down Monday, week from today, especially if they still the 1st overall pick. What's your plan? What are we doing with this asset? And I'd probably make the decision based off that plan.
All right. Because I mean, yeah, you're gonna have.
But I would be open to it. I think it's a little more complicated than the coach, because and people say you saw Eliot Wolf's first offseason. This is his first real offseason. When you change front offices, you're still working with a lot of the groundwork that the previous group put down.
He had to give out $90 million just to retain the little talent on this team already.
Right. So with Gerard Mayo, we've seen the Gerard Mayo product. I think it's a little easier to kind of make a snap decision on him right now. Whereas Eliot Wolf, this is his first real swing at it. I want to hear what I would, if I'm ownership, like, okay, what's the plan? And how realistic is that plan? If it does work out, do you feel like that's going in the right direction? And then you make the decision from there. But the reality is, like he was using Bill's groundwork last year. It's going to be his groundwork, I think, no matter what they decide.
Yep. Yeah, he's got 130 million in cap space and maybe the top overall pick there. So they have to be, the Crafts have to be pretty confident that he's the guy to kind of get this back on track. and kind of steer the ship this offseason, because it is a huge offseason. But let's talk a little bit more about that game and Drake Maye. But before we do that, I want to tell you guys about Prize Picks, where you just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash as you run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Barth and I submit our Patriots lineup every game day, and you can join in and extend it to the rest of the league. Now that it is almost playoff time, it's now or never. Don't miss out on the last few weeks of football action with Prize Picks, the best place to win cash while watching the NFL playoffs. And you can win up to, again, 1,000 times your money. And Prize Picks always puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. And they also now offer MasterCard for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. So download Prize Picks today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup on Prize Picks. Run your game. All right. Kind of a weird game for Drake Maye there against the Chargers. Leaves after the first series with the hit to the head. He comes back. He only misses 3 plays. And we saw the offense struggle to move the football. Just one scoring drive, which was the 40-plus yard heave to Pop Douglas on a free play. So what did you think of Drake's performance, maybe his last performance, but what did you think of his performance against the Chargers on Saturday?
Yeah, I thought it was fine. He never got in a rhythm between the offensive line taking a significant step back from where they've been the last few weeks to missing time and having to come back on the field. It never felt like he got in a rhythm. It never felt like he got comfortable. It didn't help. I don't think the play calling helped. It was very one-dimensional. The Chargers were kind of sitting past the whole time. Not one you write home about. You just kind of chalk it up as, hey, don't become a regular thing, and you move forward from there.
Yep. The big thing to me with Drake was just he kind of struggled with seeing pressure before the snap and then dealing with pressure after the snap. Felt like he bailed out of the pocket a few times early. Even on those 2 fourth down Derwin James sacks, like looks like he maybe could have stood in there. The second one especially, he had a wide open Hunter Henry, which is a play we've seen him make a lot, right? Like Hunter Henry's running that little out route on the sticks, and he hits him with an anticipatory throw, and they can move the chains. So he missed that. The first one too, maybe he could have just flipped it out to Gibson, or if he wanted to really get ballsy, take the shot deep to Kendrick Bourne. So just didn't love how he kind of saw and handled the blitz, but in and out of the game with the head injury. Pressure rate was right around 50%. That spiked back up. There was a lot coming at him, and Jesse Minter is a good defensive coordinator there with Harbaugh. Had some good exotic pressures coming after him, so a lot to deal with, but didn't necessarily love how he handled the blitz at times during that game. But that offensive line, Mayo said the one positive maybe from the whole game was Cole Strange. We saw his first start at center. Did you take anything from Strange's start? Did you like what you saw from him?
I thought he was fine. There weren't any egregiously bad snaps. He did have a penalty. He did have an early snap. It's not enough time to evaluate, like, can he be David Andrews' long-term replacement? But it certainly wasn't a disaster for a guy playing center really for the first time in a competitive game at the college or pro level. I thought he held up well.
Yeah. Didn't look
definitely
out of place.
Did better than I thought he would do.
Yeah, no bad snaps, right? I think there was one kind of low one, but nothing kind of egregious when it came to snaps. So he hopefully could get another start Sunday. Hopefully Caden Wallace starts this last game. We only saw him for like 14 plays to end at right tackle, but hopefully he gets in there in that along the offensive line. We talked about kind of the running backs at the top. Anything from the wide receivers from yesterday? Kind of business as usual with the rotation. We just saw Polk and Baker at the very end for garbage time.
So, yeah, neither one of them played until, like, we've seen Polk. We talked about this. We've seen Polk mix in, but, not be involved. But he'd been on the field like 20-something snaps a game. Neither of the rookies played. I texted you guys. I didn't see him on the sideline.
I think it was like the quarter. You texted us in like the third quarter, I think.
Yeah, start of third quarter.
I was looking at the second quarter and I couldn't find them, and then I eventually found them. They just had like big coats on, like huddled up, like
right. But that tells me
it didn't look like they were ready to go in the game.
It tells me the plan was for them to not play. So it was with about 5 minutes to go in the third, they put Polk in because Booty had just run a deep route and needed a breather. And so they had to go to the next guy, and then didn't see either of them again until, very late. They had put Caden Wallace in and Lester Cotton in, and they came in with all the backups.
Yep. And then 2 passes to him, 2 incompletions. Polk, one of Maye's best throws of the day was to Polk on that kind of over the shoulder in the bucket, goes off his hands, hurts his shoulder in the process. So who knows if he'll even be ready to go next week, if they want to lean more into those guys, in this kind of season finale. We'll see. But I will give credit in that room. Kendrick Bourne, I know the box score only said like 2 catches for 22 yards. I thought Kendrick Bourne had a good game. He was getting open a lot. So just give Kendrick Bourne some flowers there. But anything else from the offense that you wanted to touch on, or we can move over to the defense, even though we touched on that a little bit.
Yeah, but I think that's pretty much it for me on the offense.
All right. We did talk about the defense a lot, just completely falling apart after one of their better games last week in Buffalo. The run defense, I thought, was surprisingly well against the Chargers, if you want a bright spot. But outside of that, it was a pretty poor effort. No pass rush. The coverage falls apart, specifically with McConkey. Herbert just kind of torched them up, 3 touchdowns. And Christian Gonzalez left with an injury to make everything even better. He's in concussion protocol, so we'll see. But anything from that secondary? We saw Alex Austin, Isaiah Bolden had to come in, take bigger roles without Christian Gonzalez. Did you like how those 2 guys held up? And then, obviously some struggles from Jonathan Jones with Lads. Doesn't have those young legs to deal with that 4-3 speed. No. Lad McConkey, Jonathan Jones does anymore. But what'd you see from those corners without Christian Gonzalez yesterday?
I mean, Austin continues to look like he deserves a role in a team. On Lad McConkey, I'll just say this, and I think we had this conversation off the air, Brian. And when it comes to Eliot Wolf and when it comes to where the Patriots are at, and this goes to a draft point as well. So Lad McConkey crossed the 1,000-yard mark over in this game. 3rd rookie to do it this year. 2nd receiver, joins Malik Neighbors and Brock Bowers. Is Lad McConkey a 1,000-yard receiver if the Patriots draft him? And everything else remains the same. Is Lad McConkey a 1,000-yard receiver in New England?
No, but I'd still give him 600, 700. What Pop get last year? What was Pop's season where it was
like 700?
700? I think he could have done that 100%.
I think he might be closer to where Keyshawn Booty is
now.
Because they had no choice but to. Remember, they were out of bodies. They had no choice but to play Pop Douglas. They tried to bench him and they couldn't.
That's fair.
They love benching rookies. They can't. At that position, they still can't figure out how to develop these players. And tell me if you disagree, Brian. But for me personally, seeing Lad McConkey in person yesterday, Lad McConkey is a much better. Or when I saw him Saturday, Lad McConkey is a much better football player now than he was at the University of Georgia last year. True or false?
True. I mean, yeah, he's definitely better.
He's better.
I thought he was very good at Georgia too.
He was good at Georgia, but I think his route running is a little bit crisper, and I think he has a much better feel for reading and reacting to a defense and getting himself into space. He looks better at that. Jalen Polk, meanwhile, looks like the same guy he was at Washington.
Yeah.
There's minimal, if any, development there. Javon Baker, now we have to go way back to the last time we saw him, but Javon Baker looks like the same guy he was at UCF. I would even argue, and you guys know, Brian, I'm a big fan of Pop Douglas. I think he's a good player. I think he's a very good player. I think he's a starting slot receiver in the NFL. Did they develop Pop Douglas, or was he just a guy that kind of fell through the cracks because he was undersized at a small school? And this is what he is. Like, is he better this year than he was last year?
He kind of feels like the same player, right? Like
is Keyshawn Booty better than he was? Yeah. Is Keyshawn Booty better than he was last year? Or does he just have a better quarterback?
And he's on the field.
Right. Well, I even going back to training camp. So, because we saw him a good amount in camp as a rookie. The point being, the Patriots are not developing these guys. Drafting the right player, and you guys should know this rant by heart at this point. Drafting the right player is only half the battle. You have to develop them. And to me, the second guess is not Polk or McConkey. I'm not. Hindsight is easy. When you talk about the draft, I will own up to where I was. I had McConkey slightly ahead of Polk, but I had them about the same caliber of prospect. The real second guess to me is recognize you can't develop this position and move up to get a guy like Xavier Legette, who, again, doesn't have the production McConkey does, but is in a much worse situation. Maybe you move way up and you get a guy like Brian Thomas. Get a guy that's more NFL ready. And in reality, what this all comes back to is we talk about the coaching staff, and people are going to say this is me making excuses for Eliot Wolf. It's not. It's just making sure the blame is assigned all the way around. The player wasn't developed. You got to look at the offensive coaching staff. Alex Van Pelt, Tyler Hughes. That these play, and Hughes has been here in the past, and wide receivers have not developed. I can think of in the last 10 years, basically since Edelman, one wide receiver who got significantly better after joining the Patriots, and that's Jacoby Myers. You tell me, Brian. N'Keal didn't really get better. Tyquan didn't really get better. Most of these guys did not really get noticeably better. So, one, they need to get a new receivers of the entire offensive staff. It's almost all those Eliot Wolf, Cleveland, Green Bay guys, except for some reason the wide receiver spot was the one they said, let's bring the guy back from the previous regime in Tyler Hughes. You got to get a new wide receivers coach. And I reserve the right to change my mind if they have a new wide receivers coach, if they have a new GM. As it stands right now, I don't know that I want them to take a wide receiver in the top 100 of this draft. I think I would be uncomfortable with that because I can't watch them do this again.
Yeah.
Exactly. DK Metcalf, T. Higgins. They need a guy who is as ready, as polished, as proven as can be. They need a guy that can step on the field day one of the spring and make a visible, noticeable difference. A guy that has gravity. And I don't want to hear Travis Hunter is this elite athlete. Tet McMillan can do this and that. They have not proven themselves in the NFL. There is no such thing as a perfect prospect. I was told for months and months and months last year that despite the Patriots needing a quarterback and there being potentially generational quarterbacks on the board, Marvin Harrison was a can't-miss prospect. I was told, how many times are we told Harrison is can't miss? Brian, is he a top 2 rookie receiver in the league right now?
Marvin Harrison?
Yeah.
He's not even top 4.
So
3?
There's your can't.
Well, no, it's Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr., Ladd McConkey are definitely the top 3.
So that's your can't miss prospect is behind Ladd McConkey, who was a second-round pick, who at the time people thought was overdrafted. If you go back, and people thought Polk was overdrafted too, that was supposed to be A.D. Mitchell, if you remember correctly. So I don't want to hear about can't miss talent with Travis Hunter potentially being wide receiver. And the more I hear, the more I believe he's a corner. But I don't want to hear about him or Tet McMillan being can't miss. If you want to double up, we can have that conversation. Like if it's, and you have to be smart about it. You can't pay T. Higgins and draft Tet McMillan. That's the same player. Now we're probably talking about Luther Burden if we're going to do a double up thing. But they want to take a project guy. And I know this is supposed to be defense and I went on an offense tangent, but I forgot to get this in before.
No, it's good.
You want to take a flyer on an upside athletic guy on day 3? Have at it. I have no problem with that. Top 100 picks need to be on the line of scrimmage. Go get a proven guy that steps on the field day 1 and is ready, not just to start, not just to play, but to dominate. That's the guy they need.
Yep. Yeah, I love the idea of adding a veteran and a veteran wide receiver coach in that process because you need, that position hasn't been, a lot of rookie first-year coaches in that role too. And you still have a lot of young guys. Like even if you get that veteran that doesn't need to be necessarily coached up very much, like you still have a lot of young guys in that room that we just talked about. Like Pop's going to be here. Booty will be here in the summer. Polk will probably still be here as a second-round pick. We'll see what Javon Baker's future is, but maybe a new coach in there can just give those guys a little bit of a bump too. Like I'm not counting on it, but if you get a proven coach in there, maybe help those guys a little bit as well.
If you're a Patriots fan, and I don't think this is going to happen, but can we dream for a second?
Let's do it.
Ohio State gets pantsed in the Rose Bowl. Ryan Day gets fired. They blow that whole staff out. The Patriots should be ready to make Brian Hartline the highest paid positional coach in the NFL.
Did he accept that head coaching job? Didn't he say he had a head coaching job offer?
He did, but it was at West Virginia, wasn't it? Or did he have another one?
I think it was West Virginia.
Because what they hired Rich Rod.
Right.
I know he interviewed at West Virginia, unless he no, here 58 minutes ago from 11 Warriors, which is like the Ohio State Pats Pulpit. Vaunted Buckeyes wide receiver coach Brian Hartline says a head coaching position isn't on his mind. Still loves Ohio State. Now, look, maybe they fire Ryan Day and keep him. But if Ryan Day gets let go and they just decide we're cleaning house altogether, I would open up the checkbook for that guy.
Yeah, definitely.
That is, I think, as proven a wide receivers coach as you are going to get. I also would throw out, if they do move on from Mayo and it's Mike Vrabel, he has a good relationship with Wes Welker, who's done a pretty good job in that role at a couple stops. That's another guy I would put on the short list.
I would love that. Give me Wes Welker back here. I would love that.
Or do Vrabel and Wes Welker end up at Ohio State and then Brian Hartline comes here? I would take that as well.
He doesn't want to coach at college, Vrabel. He's said that. So
I hadn't seen that. It's been like my sleeper for him is Ohio State. But
he said it. He was on I think it might have been around the combine last year. He was on a PMT.
Okay.
And they asked him about college coaching, and he's like, yeah, I don't really want to recruit or anything. So, I mean, maybe he's had a change of heart, but he's going to have
now you can just hire a GM to do it.
Yeah, he's going to have offers, though, in the NFL. So I'd imagine that's still his preference. But someone mentioned Sean Jefferson, too, because, like, the Jets are going to be hiring a new coach and everything. And he's got some ties here. Maybe.
They interviewed Sean Jefferson, right, for the OC job after the Patricia year. If I remember correctly,
they did Keenan McCardell or Keenan Mardell from the Vikings.
Keenan McCardell,
the Vikings wide receiver coach. Did they do Sean Jefferson too?
I thought they did. They interviewed a former Patriots receiver. Was it Jefferson or was it somebody else? I thought they interviewed Jefferson. Yeah, they did. They did. They interviewed. Yeah, because he coached. Wasn't he the one that Calvin Johnson said he was the best coach he ever had, or was that McCardell?
Let me see. I'm on Sean Jefferson right now. Yeah, he was with the Lions from 08 to 12, wide receivers coach. So
I remember making a big deal about that. Yeah, Calvin Johnson. Sean Jefferson's the best coach I've ever had.
Yeah. So I know he's bounced around.
Calvin Johnson says that.
He's been on 3 teams in 3 years: Cardinals, Panthers, Jets. But like, if you want an experienced guy, he's been coaching wide receivers since 2007, and he played the position for. Yeah, and he's played the position for what? You have a 12, 13-year career, NFL career. So that's a guy. And maybe he'll bring Garrett Wilson here with him with the Jets. How about that? Wouldn't that be fun?
Would you trade the first overall pick to the Jets?
So I was thinking that, like, if you swap with them, could you get Garrett Wilson out of it too? But you give the Jets a quarterback?
I wouldn't. I know it's the Jets, and I get that. If that quarterback ends up being a guy, there's no coming back from that.
It's tough.
There's no coming back from putting an elite quarterback on your own schedule twice a year. I wouldn't do it. Now, I would take the Jets' call, and I would use their offer to leverage other teams. I wouldn't let other teams know I'm not interested in trading with the Jets. I would make it very public that I'm listening to offers with the Jets. But I ultimately wouldn't take it. If we want to go down, do we want? I know we're trying to do the game, but let's be honest.
The game's over.
Yeah. So I posted yesterday the 2 trades in the last 25 years involving the first overall pick. It's happened twice since 2000, and it was the Bears-Panthers trade a couple years ago, and it was 2016 Rams-Titans in the Jared Goff year. Actually, the first and second round picks are traded that year. So off the top on that, I feel like Patriots fans want, or I shouldn't say all Patriots fans. I think there is a subsect of Patriots fans that just really, really, really want Travis Hunter because they want the shiny new toy. And they know it's maybe a luxury pick, borderline irresponsible pick, but they want him. So the way to justify it is basically to say everybody else sucks. And not just, oh, the tackles are really guards. Oh, the receivers are too slow. Oh, Abdul Carter's too raw. But now you also have to knock the quarterback so you don't trade down out of range. And I mean, justify it however you want. I'm here. Well, you look at those trades, there's nobody close in this draft to those guys. Shedeur, before we knew he was going back, was QB4 last year. And I think people had him closer to Williams, Maye, and Daniels than they did to Nix, McCarthy, and Penix, right? Like, am I remembering that wrong?
Especially at the start of the call. I know,
Right.
like, he kind of faded to end last college season.
But I don't
at
think
the
he faded
start,
because he
like,
was bad. I think he faded because everybody knew that, like, Deion said in
offensive-
October he was going back to school.
Yeah. And like his play,
Right.
I mean, like his play kind of faded a little bit, like because the offensive line was a mess there.
That
He was
too.
getting hit so much, but
And let's
yeah,
let's
he
not
started the year at the top of that. Not the
Right.
top, it was always kind of Caleb Williams, and
Yeah.
then Jaden Daniels shot out of nowhere, but he was definitely up there, I'd say, in like the first half of the first round.
And let's not, like, people debated Bryce Young. People were saying, there were people who were saying Will Levis should have been the first overall pick in that draft. I'm not saying they were right, but that was the conversation. And let's not, revisionist history. Jared Goff, the big surprise that year was that he was going ahead of Marcus Mariota. Again, if I remember correctly, Brian, feel free to correct me on that.
No, I think that's it.
Was that 15 or 16? Now I'm blanking on the year.
Oh, no. Mariota was Winston.
Mario, who was it? Was the next
Wentz.
guy, and people were surprised.
It was Wentz,
yes, and people were surprised that Jared Goff was going ahead of Carson Wentz. So, is Shedeur an amazing prospect? No. I think we're doing a little bit revisionist history on the prospects that were available when those past trades were made. The other thing, people look at the return. I think they look at the round of the picks. They don't look at the numbers. The Bears moved back to 9. The Rams, and I would not do this trade, or not the Rams. The Rams moved up. The Titans moved back to 15. The Patriots should not be moving that far back. I would go 7, maybe 8 at the most. So maybe that Panthers trade is in play. Here's what I would do. I'm going to throw a trade at you, Brian. And obviously there's a lot to be done, but considering this could all be gone next week when Joe Milton throws for 500 yards and 7 touchdowns, so we might as well have the conversation now while we can. And this is probably as far as I'm willing to move down. And maybe you even move back up after, but I would do it. The Raiders currently sit at 8. So if we use that Panthers trade as a roadmap, you move 1. I'll leave some room for it being a slightly worse quarterback class. You move 1 in a day 3 pick. The Panthers only had to give up, the Bears only had to give first overall pick. 1 in a day 3 pick. You get back 8. Whatever the second round pick is, it's going to be right around 40. You get a first next year. You get a second next year. And you get either Max Crosby or Colton Miller. So
that'd be
current 1, current 2, future 1, future 2, and then Max Crosby or Colton Miller. And you maybe throw in a day 3 pick to that covers the gap to me between Shedeur Sanders and Bryce Young. I would even, if you want to go the Judon pick, I would throw in the Judon pick. I would do that. And at 8, what are you going to get? It's a little far. I still think you probably get one of Banks, Campbell, or Carter at 8. I don't think all 3 of those guys are going in the top 7. Or maybe now you flip one of those picks and you move up from 8 to 5, right? Maybe if you can save the Judon pick, you use the Judon pick to move up from 8 to 5. That's not an unrealistic trade. That is almost bar for bar what the Panthers gave up to move up to get Bryce Young.
Yeah.
Now, we'll see where everything settles, but
I love the idea of getting a player in that.
Yeah, I do too.
Trade, right? Someone who can come in and help you right away. Like, I know the Jets situation is tough, but if you could move back and get Garrett Wilson, and then like you're right there, you get Kelvin Banks or Abdul Carter, or Matt. I don't know if Max Crosby, but Colton Miller, maybe one of their. They don't want Michael Mayer anymore. You could throw him in one of the deals. So
I don't think Michael Mayer's that caliber of player.
But but
Colton Miller is a legit starting left tackle, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're moving back to 8, but you're also getting that guy. You're now getting a guy that's a proven starter, and ideally at 8, you're still getting another plus starting player. So it's, and I'm just throwing this out there. 1 overall for 8, call it 40, future first, future second, and Colton Miller, Max Crosby. You can debate that one amongst yourselves. I think Crosby has a higher short-term ceiling. Colton Miller's more of a long-term play. He's not the superstar Max Crosby is, but you're getting a really solid player, a little bit younger at a position that's maybe a little more important. So you can, oh wow, Colton Miller's 29. All right, never mind. But you're still getting a starting left tackle.
Is he really?
Yeah. I thought he was like 26.
Interesting. Okay.
Turns 30 in October. You can still throw him in. Still throw him in. Now I'm even, if it's Colton Miller, I'm not giving up the Judon pick. Now it's just that first.
Yeah.
That's a trade I would throw out there.
Yep. And someone, I kind of wanted to bring something along these lines up. Someone said, the Panthers are here to trade. Other teams aren't that stupid to kind of give up a haul like that. Teams are stupid.
We're counting on NFL teams. Let's look at some of the teams behind the Patriots, Brian.
I was gonna bring this up when you were talking about, kind of Shador and would people want to trade up for him. We were talking with, it was Taylor Evan before the game on Saturday. All it takes is one team. All it takes is one team to fall in love with. It could be Cam Ward. Like if these teams are about to read off, like the Browns, if the Browns go through their process and love Cam Ward, even though everyone in the draft says this guy is a mid first round pick, second round pick. If the Browns think he is a top 3 pick worthy and they're worried that they're not going to get him, they will move up and go ahead and read these teams off, because there are probably some stupid teams in that list that sit right behind the Patriots that need a quarterback right now.
I'm not going to go in order. I'm going to save one for last because I want to make an example out of them in particular. But the Tennessee Titans traded A.J. Brown because they thought Treylon Burks would be a comparable player, and in response, they fired one of the best coaches in the league. Dumb. The Cleveland Browns. Dumb. The Jacksonville Jaguars hired Urban Meyer to develop a first overall draft pick. Dumb. The Las Vegas Raiders went through the whole thing with Josh McDaniels, paid Derek Carr, cut him a year later, thought Aiden O'Connell and Jimmy Garoppolo were the answers. Dumb.
And have Deion Sanders in their back pocket.
I'll even throw the New Orleans Saints in there. I probably wouldn't trade down to 10. I also don't think they're a dumb team. I just think they manipulated the cap for so long and they had some older rosters. It's finally catching up to them. The team I saved, and you might notice that they're missing, is the New York Giants. And this is why I wouldn't be surprised if you get a team to get dumb. It's a copycat league. It's a PR league. The Giants, and we're in our bubble in New England, so maybe people haven't seen this, but if you look nationally, the Giants have been getting ripped to shreds by their own fan base and others for not offering more for Drake Maye. And we know that because it's in that offseason hard knocks that no NFL team should ever agree to do, that can only end poorly. Between the Saquon Barkley clip, well, I'd hate to see Saquon Barkley go to Philly, right? That clip. And the Drake Maye thing, Joe Schoen probably isn't going to survive. Is it Schoen or Shane? I always forget.
I think it's Shane.
Joe Shane is not going to survive. Other teams, I think, are going to look at that and say, we don't want to be this year's Giants. We don't want it out there that what if Cam Ward's really good? What if Shedeur Sanders is really good? And now you have to answer to your fans and you have to answer to the national media why you didn't offer enough to go up and get them. Especially these teams like the Titans, like the Giants, like the Raiders that are so quarterback starved. The Browns might have bought themselves another year with the restructuring they did to Deshaun Watson's contract. They may be in position to make a rare good day 2 quarterback pick. But everybody else, I said this last year. This is my philosophy with the Patriots. If you think that guy is good, nothing is worth. There's not too much you can give up if you think you can win a Super Bowl with that guy. We're not going to now suddenly expect NFL teams to be smart, especially when it comes to the quarterback position. J.J. McCarthy went 15th last year. That was a bad decision.
10th.
10th. Went at 10th. Kenny Pickett was a first round. Bo Nix went 15th. Bad decision. Yeah. He's playing well, but I would argue that's Mac Jones waiting to happen. Kenny Pickett was a first round pick because of a scarcity of talent available at that position in a year when there were more quarterback needy teams than quarterbacks available. Now, Kenny Pickett didn't go at the top of the draft. So I get that maybe isn't totally applicable here, but the point being, do not underestimate how stupid teams will be in pursuit of a franchise quarterback. And if I'm the Patriots, I am testing that stupidity. I am seeing how far I can push that bar. And the Patriots would be stupid not to do that. And honestly, I would do that from the number 1 overall pick. I would do it from the number 3 overall pick. If Travis Hunter is going to go 2, let's say the Browns are like, we got another year with Deshaun. We're going to give one more look with Deshaun Watson. We're going to add Travis Hunter. I would be looking at the 3rd overall pick. There's still a quarterback on the board, seeing how dumb teams get. So let's not act like teams are going to finally figure it out at the quarterback position, because I'll believe that one when I see it, right? When pigs fly, teams will figure it out at the quarterback position.
Yeah. I think they're probably Patriots are seeing it the same way, that they're going to trade back. Because speaking of that Hard Knocks, we got a couple phone calls and conversations with Joe Shane and Eliot Wolf, and I went back and watched the clips yesterday after they shot back up to 1 overall. And one of the things Wolf says in that conversation was, if we had a quarterback, I feel like I'd be calling in a trade right now. They have their quarterback. They have Drake Maye. So
that's a good find, Brian.
Here comes the trade.
I was going to put that on Twitter. You should put that on Twitter.
I was gonna wait till they get the number 1 or get the final.
Oh yeah, don't jinx it. Don't jinx it. Yeah,
so right. I just posted yesterday. I just posted the one of him, and it's like on the phone with Eliot Wolf. So after they get the finalized pick, I'll post that one so we can figure out where we're really.
Let's not act. I gave that one earlier, right? 1st, 2nd, 840, future 1st, future 2nd, starting caliber player on the line of scrimmage. Pick who that is with the Raiders. And I saw like 3 or 4 comments. Absolutely not. There's no way you're getting that much. A team got that much 2 years ago. And maybe it comes in a little less. Maybe they only get 1st, 2nd, future 2nd player. That's still within the ballpark. And you have precedent, if you're the Patriots, to point to that and say, this is what this pick is worth.
Yep.
And they should use that.
Do you take Jacoby Myers back in the trade? Raiders.
Only if they take Jalen Polk.
Jalen Polk
off your hands.
You're not. What about have you been working on including Jalen Polk in the trade for DK Metcalf to
somebody
Ryan
tweeted
Grubb,
that at me.
Coordinator?
Yeah, somebody tweeted that at me last week. It's an interesting idea. I don't think Jalen Polk is getting you DK Metcalf outright by any means.
It would be like, if you're giving up 2 draft picks for DK, you do a draft pick. It may be Polk if the Ryan Grubb.
Or let's say you and another team are offering like a 2nd and a 5th, right? And the other team says, all right, we'll throw in a 6th. And you say, we'll throw in Jalen Polk, who Grubb has familiarity with. That is an enticing and unique option. I guess unless Tampa's trying to trade for DK Metcalf, it's an enticing and unique option that other teams really can't match. So I wish I remember who tweeted at me. It's a really good thought. Something to keep in the back of your mind. It's not going to happen outright, but maybe that's the difference, and it pushes that deal across the finish line. You're still going to have to give up other premium assets, but maybe that's the final piece of the puzzle that gets the deal done.
Yep. All right. So
while we're on this, just because I see this comment here. Is T. Higgins going to be a free agent, Brian Hines? Yes or no?
I still don't think so, but they can just tag him too, right? And trade him theoretically.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to do that though. I think he's back. There is this model now with the Dolphins, with the Eagles, where you just pay the receivers, you keep the quarterback happy, and you figure the rest out in the draft. It feels like the Dolphins are not the Dolphins. The Dolphins are doing that. And it feels like the Bengals are full steam ahead towards that. Yeah. I mean, the fact that Higgins fires his agent and hires the same agent as Jamar Chase. How are you? And then Burrow comes out like the next week and says, we need to get a deal done with this guy. How do you not read that as anything but they're setting up for him to go back? And talking to people who cover the Bengals, they think that's what's happening.
Yep. And if he does make it, the Los Angeles Chargers are going to be on his phone immediately too, which that's going to be the big thing for Wolf. When these guys get to free agency, you can offer them the most money. You can offer anyone you want the most money. They're going to be able to do that. You got to get them to sign on the dotted line.
That's after you give Coy Cronk the bag.
He got released off the Vikings practice squad this past week. So Coy Cronk is back on the market.
At least if you're competing with the Chargers, I think you don't have to worry about income tax, right? California's as high as Massachusetts or higher. I don't know. I know it's high in both places.
I would imagine it's similar. It's not something where he's going to Florida, right? And
Right.
no tax or anything. So,
Here, state income tax rates 2024. Part of being a football writer is looking up taxes. California has it doesn't say the rate, it just says graduated rate.
It was the NHL. Everyone was mad at the Panthers and the Lightning. They want to have different salary caps for like teams that are in income free.
I think eventually contracts will be adjusted to tax because more teams are in states that are impacted than aren't, and they'll outvote them, and there'll be some sort of make good there. So California, if you make more than $1 million, 13.3%. Ooh. Massachusetts, income over $1 million, subject to a 9% tax rate.
There we go.
I'm obviously not familiar with that. I had to look that up. So that's all 9 to 13. That's 9% of $1 million. Don't make me do math on there. It's 9. So that's an extra, what, $4,000 for every million that you get to keep? If it's 4% higher.
I was trying to do math.
What's 1% of $1 million is 1,000, right?
1%. Yeah, I think so.
So yeah,
Math
for every million you make, you get to keep
40,000.
4,300 more in Massachusetts than you would in California.
All right.
Oh, apparently it's 40,000 more. Well, that's even more notable. So if you make 10 million, you're talking about another $500,000 and you're not paying in taxes.
Everyone's hitting us with 40,000.
Everybody. This is not a math show. This has never been a math show. I can't believe I tried to do that on the air. But you shouldn't lose teams to California over tax, I guess is the moral of the story here. You lose a guy to Texas. You lose a guy to, I don't know what other states don't have income tax.
Florida.
Alaska, they don't have an NFL team. You lose a team to Florida. You lose a player to Florida. You lose a player to Las Vegas. You lose a player to Tennessee. Like, these states don't have income taxes. Wyoming, when they get their NFL team eventually, yeah, you can blame the tax. You lose a player to California, you can't blame the tax.
Massachusetts, you can't complain. Massachusetts if you lose T. Higgins to the Chargers. So remember that. So, all right, we will wrap it up here. We got to get off. Taylor and Mike are coming on right after.
They're going to do more tax math.
Yeah, they're going to do math. I'm sure their whole show will be math. So very quickly before we go, I want to tell you guys about Game Time. Last Patriots game of the year coming up on Sunday. And who knows, maybe it's Joe Milton's first career start. And you have to be in the building for that one. And Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks to get you there. That makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier because they filter out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Looks like the cheapest get-in right now for Bills at Patriots on Sunday. Sunday, 1 o'clock is the game time that was announced yesterday. $37, or you can move down right under the lighthouse front section. $72 with the Game Time Picks filter. So head to Game Time for their lowest price guaranteed and other in-app features such as seat views, all-in pricing, and of course, Game Time Picks, which makes it even easier to save more on your sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and any other tickets. And take the guesswork out of buying those tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. So we will wrap it up there. Barth and I will be back on Thursday, most likely, as usual, to preview that season finale. Hopefully, we have some more insight on the quarterbacks and who might be suiting up. And, of course, we'll be talking draft. The next round of the college football playoffs is also coming up. That will be completed. What's that? Wednesday, right? New Year's?
Tuesday, 1 game Tuesday night, 3 on Wednesday.
So we will talk about those as well on Thursday as they keep narrowing that down and some draft prospects there as well. So in the meantime, you can follow Barth on Twitter at RealAlexBarth. Head over to 985thesportshub.com for his Patriots coverage there. And you can follow me on Twitter at I am Brian Hines, and you go to patspulpit.com for our Patriots coverage there as well. Thanks everyone for tuning in with us today. Have a wonderful New Year's, and we will see you guys later this week.
Bye. I see the Xavier Restrepo people in the chat, by the way. Good call. This is the kind of take